Friday, 6th of September, Anno Domini 2024. We've made it, folks, to the end of the week. Yesterday on the show, we discussed some adjustments, late adjustments on the Trump campaign, who's pulling out resources from New Hampshire, Minnesota, and Virginia to concentrate on those so-called blue wall states of Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. When we discussed this yesterday, we were at pains to point out that 3 states are remaining untouched with this adjustment, and those 3 states are North Carolina, Arizona, and Nevada. So on the subject of North Carolina, which is still a big priority for the Trump campaign, my opening guest today is Michele Morrow. Now, we've had her on the show before. She's standing for state superintendent on public instruction, beloved candidate of the education industrial complex. Michele, good morning to you. There's been a development today, right, in North Carolina, that the mail-in ballots are going out from today.
That's exactly right. And so it's important that everybody here in North Carolina understands that the election officially begins on Monday. People will start casting their votes. So we have 60 days until November 5th, and it's time for us to be engaged, and we must have all hands on deck. We cannot leave anything on the table on November 6th, and we must be talking to our friends, our neighbors, our coworkers, our peers, if we're in a classroom, about the importance of this election in protecting our faith, our family, and our freedoms, and ensuring that we remain a constitutional republic, because that really is what is at stake.
Tell me, Michele, what is the engagement like there in North Carolina right now?
Well, we have boots on the ground. We have had the Trump 47 force in many of our cities knocking doors. I've been working literally since January in order to try to secure this position. And I think now that the Labor Day season has passed, people are now becoming engaged and really paying attention to who's on the ballot and what's happening and what we need to do to make sure that North Carolina stays red and that we get President Trump back into the White House.
Well, you said when you came on the show before that your priorities were really sort of to pivot towards education. I know that's an astonishing, controversial thing for state superintendents to be interested in. Could you expand on that a little bit and just give a quick overview for the Warring Posse, exactly what your priorities are that you will implement should you be victorious?
Certainly. One thing that we have to do is we have to make our schools the safest buildings in the state. We are seeing travesty after travesty, and there is no reason in 2024 why our staff and our students need to sit as potential victims of violent crime. And that is not just discussing things that could be happening from the outside threats. It's also, we've got to bring a system of civility and respect and discipline back to our classrooms. Here in North Carolina, I think it's the same around the country. We are losing our valuable teachers. We are losing students every year because there's just chaos in our classrooms, and they're not getting the education that they need to be able to pursue careers and make them critical thinkers and problem solvers, and the engineers and the scientists and the leaders that we're going to need in the future. And so that's why academics have to be trumping the political and social activism that right now is poisoning our kids' minds, and it's robbing them of the education they need to be successful adults.
Well, we have a great presence following the Warring Posse in North Carolina. What specifically is there anything that the posse can do there to support you in this campaign?
Absolutely. I need funds so that I can fight against this educational industrial complex. My opponent is the absolute antithesis. He is fighting to keep a system that is failing our students running, and he just believes that if we throw more money at it, that our kids will be able to read and write and do math. And our children are it's been an abysmal failure in literacy rates. Right now, only 25% of our eighth graders across North Carolina last year were found to be at grade level in math, reading, or science. And so it's time for everybody to get engaged. I tell people you have 60 days to sacrifice. What is that going to look like? Is that going to be writing a check? That maybe you feel the impact of that? Is that going to be having a hard conversation with someone? Maybe getting canceled on Facebook, maybe getting called a name, whatever it might be. Is that going to be going and standing at the polls and asking people to finish their ballot and fill in every last conservative from the top to the bottom, the front to the back, so that we can ensure that we have a country to give to our children and to our grandchildren that is going to be safe, that's going to be prosperous, and that's going to be free. So if they can go to my website, it's morrow4nc.com. That's MORROW, the number 4nc.com. They can sign up and volunteer. They can sign up for my email list. They can send that out, or they can donate so that I can get my message across to every voter in North Carolina. And we can defeat this failing system and actually focus on students rather than a political agenda.
Michele, outstanding. Come back on the show soon, please, and give us an update of everything that's going on in North Carolina. Wish you best of luck. God bless.
Thank you, you too.
So moving on now to United Sovereign Americans and Marley Hornik, who's a great presence here on the show. Marley, good afternoon to you. Can I just, I'm looking here at this latest legal appeal that you've got going, and it says in here, the note that you've put out, astonishing figure, really about 3.5 million ballots have been in error in the 2022 cycle. And you're trying to clean this up ahead of the 2024 election, obviously. But could you just tell us a little bit about your findings here, dig in on that statistic, because it's astonishing, especially in your own synthesis on this. That figure would amount to a vote error rate of 20% in Pennsylvania, 14% in Ohio, and 14% in the aforementioned North Carolina, compared to the minimums established by Congress, which is 0.0008%. So that's absolutely explosive research here that you cited as the background to this latest legal challenge.
Yes, thank you. That's the work of the incredible United Sovereign Americans team. Our data analysis team is made up of volunteers from across the country who are basically working for their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor are all on the line. Hundreds and hundreds of years of big data auditing and experience in software development. And this is what our audits of the list and voter participation histories show, that these, exactly like you said, 3.5 million votes that were counted from registration records that don't meet any standard of legal validity or eligibility, according to the state's records. And sometimes it's hard to think about this because we talk about these records and those records. This voter registration list at the statewide level is the only document that exists in the entirety of this creation, recording exactly which voters are legally registered for these particular states and which elections they legally voted in. There's no other record that helps us understand how 3.5 million people whose registration dates are, invalid, or their birth dates are invalid, or they can't possibly be alive because, according to the state's records, they have to be 151 years old, or any of these issues. This is the only record that exists, and what they want us to do is just take their word for it. But Congress said, "Hey, we can take their word for it a couple of times, and that's reasonable and that's warranted." But when we start to get out of the range of what's a reasonable amount of human error, we have to suspect that the election has been compromised in some way. And that's just the reality. We don't live in kindergarten. We live in the United States of America.
Marley, tell me something about this figure. this 3.4 million figure. Is that figure, I don't know how to phrase this question, is that figure officially recognized? And will it become, is it necessary for that figure to be demonstrated as part of your legal challenge? And if it is necessary, does that figure then enter the books as recognized as being validated, if you will, by the courts?
Right. Those are very good questions. And I can only say that I fully expect if we are ever able to secure a hearing on the merits, that question will arise and the credentials and certifications of our volunteer auditors will be obviously reviewed and their methodology will be reviewed. We don't have a problem with that. We have actually, in advance of filing a lawsuit in any state, we make sure that we provide the chief election official of that state with a comprehensive report regarding what we uncovered in their statewide registration list. This is an act of compassion to provide these lists. It's an act of service, an act of patriotism, and an act of compassion because unfortunately, under the United States Constitution, the chief election official of each state ultimately holds the bag on what gets certified in their state. And if they find it, if they find these registration issues, these voting issues, these reconciliation issues compelling, we're happy to help to remedy these problems. But so far, they're not interested. And they simply, they send us a cursory note saying, hey, this looks like, 3.4 million clerical errors to me. But Congress didn't allow for those number of errors. For example, you talked about Pennsylvania with a 20% voting error rate. Well, Pennsylvania, according to Congress, could have 34 errors statewide in counting ballots or counting votes. And that's still legitimate. That's okay. But, they ended up having more than 1 million. That's not okay.
Marley, let me get this right here. This research here, this is specifically referred to as having emerged from 2022. You're not trying in this challenge here. You're not trying to overturn anything in 2022, are you? You're using this research to back up your insistence that for greater election integrity in 2024. Is that correct?
Basically, yeah. Actually, there's a couple of elements to focusing on 2022 that support and bolster our legal concerns. So, first of all, 2022 was the last federal election nationwide. So, making this into a national issue and being able to demonstrate across states that there is the same issue exists and it's material everywhere you look, meaning the number of errors and the number of issues that the state is sitting on and acting as if they're legitimate is egregious. It's shocking. And the other way that this is important has to do with laying a pathway for further legal action. Now, I'm not the kind of person who wants to just sit around and file lawsuits, but what we're seeing is that the people who we relied on for so long to get these things right have really fallen down on the job, whether it's the election officials, whether it's the representatives, whether it's the courts, it doesn't matter. They have not represented well the principle of representative government for the American Republic. So our litigation strategy is designed to end with either total compliance or total accountability. And setting the stage here with this mandamus lawsuit saying across these 9 states, because we've now filed in Maryland, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Florida, Texas, Michigan, North Carolina, Colorado, and Georgia, all officially filed in federal court, saying, all we're asking for right now is for this to be fixed. But we're also citing all the fraud. We're citing all the laws that the state is responsible for upholding. And you know what? If the state doesn't do it right, the second section of the 14th Amendment says they can lose apportionment. If they go ahead knowing And having been warned through reports and having been warned through a mandamus legal action in 9 states and federal court that they're accountable for these so-called clerical errors, their state can lose apportionment. And I've had the privilege to meet with several state legislatures, even just this week, to help them understand the accountability that could be coming.
Marley, is there any precedent for that actually ever happening?
Actually, when the 14th Amendment itself was...
On the basis, excuse me, let me clarify that. Is there any basis of a state losing its apportionment as a due consequence of having failed to ensure election integrity?
No, not to my knowledge. There are numerous very contentious historical moments immediately following the Civil War. One of those was the ratification of the 14th Amendment itself, in which 6 Southern states were denied their congressional votes on the matter of ratification. They were not recognized by Congress as existing as states. You can read the record. It's pretty extraordinary, because they had tried to secede from the Union, which was a tremendous betrayal for the American people as a whole in what was not a new republic, but let's say less than 100 years, right? So everyone was staking their lives, fortunes, and sacred honor on this, and 6 states said, hey, you know what, we're out of here. And that, of course, impacts everyone. So they were not recognized in the vote on ratifying the 14th Amendment. There were also significant moments where they attempted to deny electoral representation to a number of states in the elections of 1868 and 1876. But this particular approach is new for this time, although it leverages the laws Congress passed fundamentally during the Reconstruction era. And that works out well right now, because the Supreme Court had a ruling just last year saying, hey, if you want to file 1983 lawsuits, which are lawsuits that charge officials with depriving citizens of fundamental civil rights, acting under color of law, and they allow citizens to sue these officials, in some cases, actually personally, to go after their personal assets for these deprivations. The SCOTUS decided, it was a decision written by Kavanaugh. It said, hey, you know, if you want to do this, you have to go back to when the laws you're looking at were actually passed. You have to go back to 1871. How did Congress view these circumstances in 1871? And I can tell you, Ben, in 1871, Congress dealt with election fraud with a sledgehammer.
Marley, I could spend the whole hour talking to you about this. Sadly, we went out of time. You're going to have to come back on the show. Every time you come on the show, you drop a bomb, a depth charge. This is absolutely astonishing. The consequences are astonishing. And I'd like to hear, next time you come on the show, I will definitely ask you how this latest lawsuit, how that might play out in the courts, and how that might eventually give you, and the state legislators you mentioned you were talking to, how that might give you leverage here in threatening the state, because you have a huge crowbar that you're holding over, when everything's revolving around electoral college votes, you have a huge crowbar now in your hands with this. Very quickly, how can people learn more or support United Sovereign Americans?
Sure. On X, you can find me at Marley Hornik. You can find United Sovereign Americans at United S American. We need your help to continue this litigation process. So you can go to our website, USA4freedom.com, to help us with a donation or volunteer to be part of our advocacy program. We're all about helping everyone across America get clear about what makes an election reliable, a federal election reliable, and making sure that states understand their duty and that the law is upheld. And everyone's invited.
Amazing. Marley Hornik, thanks very much for coming on the show today. God bless.
Thanks.
Amazing. Okay, so now we're going, in some ways, to my beloved homeland, the third world banana republic, formerly known as Great Britain. Rich Stern, good afternoon to you.
Hey,
we're going to talk.
thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming. we're going to talk about the SAVE Act in just one moment, but I have to muscle in. As a Brit, I have to muscle in and talk about Oasis first, and the whole issue on dynamic pricing, which is also a big thing in the States as well. I just want to read out a quote on behalf of our Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, who said, right, this is the debate over the outrage that this band called Oasis that had some success in the 1990s, God knows why or how, are reforming after 15 years. And there's, God knows how or why, some demand, considerable demand for tickets to these concerts, which is, it's all the UK is talking about right now. That and prisons, which we're going to come on to a little later. Here's what Sir Keir Starmer said, right? This is supposedly a free country. We'll grip this and make sure that tickets are available at a price that people can actually afford. Because I always thought, the UK was a free market economy. I never thought that, actually, because I was well aware of the joke. Tell me something here. I don't know. I've got my my bingo card of economic terms that you're likely to reference as you explain the nature of what prices are, right? And because there seems to be some delusion in the British government, and not only the British government, that prices are arbitrary and static. I thought all prices were dynamic.
Absolutely. Well, if you're listening to liberals talk about economics, you might want to just throw the traditional bingo board out of the window. So I think this shows exactly what's going on here. When you put a left-wing person in the office and you ask them what they think about the economy, they go right to that. Regulations, printing money, having the government take more control over things. And of course, what is the basic essential product that he cares about the price of? The essential concert ticket. You can't make this stuff up. This is what left-wingers care about. But, there's one other part to this story. Why is inflation so bad in Britain? Why is it so bad in the US or across Europe? It's because the government's printed money. In fact, government expansion of the money supply, whether you're talking about the euro, the British pound, or the US dollar, has been tremendous. And in fact, it has been higher than even the inflation we've seen so far. And that's why that's why prices continue to tick up and up. So sure, that means that concert prices are higher, but it's also why house prices are higher, groceries are higher, gas prices are higher. So, the fecklessness, right, of Keir, as you're talking about Stalin, to be talking about concert prices when his government and his party have put forward such policies that created the excess money printing, that have regulated the British economy, that have made it so that people can't afford groceries, they can't afford gas, they can't afford to buy a home. And it's not just there, it's happening in the US as well, of course.
Rich Stern, look, in the 1 minute that we have before the break, if the government were to attempt, just look in 30 seconds, if the British government were to attempt to set a price ceiling on these concert tickets, what would happen?
Oh, Oasis would break back up again, right? The reason why prices are where they are is that's what the producer needs to sell it for to be able to cover the cost of production. So if the government sets a price that's so low that you can't produce something, guess what? You just go out of business. And that's why in every place in all of human history, the price controls have been tried. You get shortages. You get less investment, less growth and opportunities, fewer people being employed, lower wages, and less access to stuff. It's 101 unless you're a liberal.
I'm absolutely astonished to see that the UK is turning so violently towards this Latin American form of populism. Rich Stern, please stay with us. We're back in 2 minutes after the break to discuss the latest on the SAVE Act.
In these crazy times, there is peace of mind in security. Security for our country, security for our leaders, and security for our families. But you're not financially secure if all your eggs are in one basket. Gold and silver are an excellent way to diversify your savings. They're a hedge against inflation. With Birch Gold Group, you can own physical gold and silver in a tax-sheltered retirement account. Secure your family's savings today. Text Bannon to 989898 and receive a free info kit on gold. Plus, this August only, Birch Gold is giving away free Trump silver coins with any purchase. This brand new one-of-a-kind silver coin features Trump boldly raising his fist in the moments after the attempt on his life. Don't miss your chance to own this special piece of history, a celebration of a leader dedicated to our security, preserved in the security of a precious metals coin. Secure your savings today and get your free Trump silver coins. Text Bannon to 989898 today. That's Bannon to the number 989898. Homes across America are being stolen every day. It's called title theft, and it's why you need to get home title protection from HomeTitleLock.com today. If no one's keeping an eye on your title, then it's just a matter of time until they target you too. Don't fall prey to these thieves. Go to HomeTitleLock.com today and make sure your title is safe. Use promo code Bannon and get a complete title scan of your home's title and your first 30 days of triple lock home title protection for free. That's HomeTitleLock.com, promo code Bannon.
All this nonsense, all this spin, they can't handle the truth.
War Room Battleground with Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back. So on this show, we have been tirelessly covering the useless GOP and its performative insistence that it wants, citing explicitly here, Speaker Mike No Johnson Johnson, going through the motions of expecting to get this SAVE Act, Chippewa SAVE Act, tacked on to the continuing resolution. Rich Stern, tell us, is this performative or is there any chance that it's actually going to come to pass?
I think sadly there's probably little chance it's going to pass. However, I will say this, though. While it's performative, I think, unfortunately, for most of the people that are in the Congress, there is a good group of stalwart conservatives who really care about the country, who care about the border and security, and care about election security that are actually putting this forward. So, at some level, I view this as a very good step because it means that those conservative voices are starting to have real power and influence and are getting the vote, even if the vote is not likely to pass. So certainly a step in the right direction. But, what is it we're talking about here? The SAVE Act would force states to actually collect real proof of citizenship to be able to be on the voter rolls. It would force states to clean up the voter rolls, to get rid of illegal aliens, and all of these things. It would create all kinds of enforcement mechanisms. It would be a real first step in the direction of getting rid of illegal aliens who have the ability to vote in our elections, something as absurd as that. So what they're doing here is trying to tie that to the government funding bill. And again, this is a government funding bill that's always bipartisan, that funds the regulatory state, the deep state, and all the woke stuff the government's going on. So the insistence that the SAVE Act is there is at least one actual conservative win attached to a bill that otherwise is just funding more of the deep woke state.
Okay, so you think it's performative. I agree. But we'll follow the fight. It leads me on to something which I've said on previous occasions, that fundamentally it's not really the election, the presidential election or the two-year elections to Congress or to the Senate that are important. It's the primaries that are far more important, really, because otherwise you're just going to end up voting for people who will turn around and betray you to your face, which is exactly, I think, what we're going to see on the debate regarding the SAVE Act. And the jobs report that came out today, great news for the administration or not so great?
Oh, I think it's terrible news for the administration. And, it's yet one more of these distractions, I think, the way you're talking about, where Congress wants us to look at some shiny object and miss what they've been doing to us. So, what's in this jobs report? Lackluster job growth, a loss of 24,000 manufacturing jobs. That's a canary in the mine shaft. And then a lot of the growth, it comes from industries that are directly subsidized by the government, or, it's government job growth. on the backs of more printed money, which means more inflation in the future. But I'll tell you the other thing that's going on in that jobs report is yet another string of revisions down of previous month's job growth. In fact, this new report has 86,000 jobs that were supposedly created in June and July revised as having not been created. So those jobs reports that were barely holding on to growth really were below what you'd need to maintain the labor force. And when are we getting that? 2 months after the fact, in a buried footnote at the bottom of this jobs report. So it's more of the same. An administration that puts out false job report numbers that it then revises down in months afterward. Can't make this stuff up.
No, it's not really going to be petrol on the joy bonfire this time around. It's not the reality that people are feeling. Rich Stern, Heritage Foundation, thanks very much for joining us on the show today.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. Joe Allen, The Guardian has an article today saying that conspiracy theorists of the world can rip off your tinfoil hats and take a bow. You were kind of right. This, I think, will be of interest to anyone with a smartphone. There's been a lot of suspicion, talk that smartphones were listening to us, and apparently it's the case. This active listening software actually does exist. Tell us a little bit about that, if you would. And good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ben. How are you? Yes, the story was broken by 404 Media. The company in question is the Cox Media Group. They have a number of radio stations, television stations. They also do a lot of advertising. 404 acquired a slide deck from November of 2023 in which the presenter was bragging about their active listening program. What active listening is, you have obviously sensors all over your home if you are a trusting consumer. That would include your smartphone, your smart TV, your Alexa, any kind of smart device. And these have microphones. And the microphones are picking up everything that you are saying. Now, with the advent of more and more sophisticated artificial intelligence with natural language processing, it's very easy for those microphones to kind of make sense of what you're saying, right, through the AI. And so in the slide deck for their active listening program, basically they're saying that they're using your day-to-day conversations they're eavesdropping on to give you better and better advertising. This has been known for a long time. People have oftentimes complained or freaked out because they say something and then an ad pops up about what they're saying. Well, Cox Media Group has shown, or has, basically tipped their hand. They are doing that. And some of their contractors are people like Meta or Facebook, Google, Amazon, Bing. So far, the reps from Meta and from Google have denied that they're using active listening in their products, and Amazon has also denied it. They've, in fact, removed, or I think it was actually Google, removed Cox Media from their list of partners. But I think that these are also probably best to be interpreted as them covering their tails.
Joe, tell me something here on a practicality basis. I mean, as you mentioned, the platforms have vociferously denied this, and of course they would do. How does this kind of revelation could cost the industry, the social media platform industry, billions of dollars in advertising, right? It's a big thing, this, if true. How did this revelation...
I don't think so.
Well, my question was, how did this... Or tell me why, because my question was, how did a revelation as important as this end up in an obscure company's PowerPoint presentation? How come they didn't guard it more closely? But tell me why I'm wrong.
Well, from the very beginning, I mean, from the Patriot Act tinfoil hat people have been proven right, that the government has every intention of scraping over as many communications as possible to look for dissent. This has been known forever, and people still use all of these different platforms. We use these platforms. So I think that the chances of people seeing this and understanding this actually impacting on a broad level people's use of these platforms, I just don't see it. I think that people are, in essence, addicted to the convenience. They are kind of herded into a position where they need this. So that's why.
Joe, but surely there's a difference, surely, between the government spying on us and Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg spying on us, right?
I'll tell you what. If the 2 minutes video if time permits, I'll give you a good indication of where these companies are coming from.
Let's do it. Let's run it.
The main goal is to up-level the quality of Copilot. And so we're rapidly building, some of the best models in the world, partnering very closely with OpenAI, building on top of all of OpenAI models and infrastructure, fine-tuning their models. And the next phase is that we're really going to start focusing on memory and personalization. I mean, your AI should remember everything about you, all your context, all your personal data, everything that you've said, and be there to support you and be your aid and your sidekick, throughout your life. So that's what we're going to be focused on next. People have often said that like an AI subsumes all other interfaces and surfaces. And I think that probably overstates it, but it's the right direction. I think there'll come a time in a few years when the first thing you think is you just say, hey, Copilot, can you take care of this for me? Or what's the answer to that? Or where do I find it? Can you book this? Remember that, buy this, do that. You're just going to have this ever-present aid in your life. It's going to change what it means to use a keyboard. It's going to change what it feels like to have apps. It'll move us way beyond the search engine and, the browser. And you're certainly not going to think I need to go write a document or send a message in a traditional way. You'll still have those things, but your AI will just manage a canvas of activity across your entire life, and largely be coordinating with other AIs and other services and collecting information for you.
I think it's important to design human compatible systems, but I think it is a mistake to assume that they are human-like in their thinking or capabilities or limitations, even though we sort of train them off of, we do this behavioral cloning off of all of this human text data. They clearly can do extremely superhuman things already and then very, very not human things later. So I always try to think of it as an alien intelligence and not try to project my anthropomorphic biases onto it.
With regard to the first guy, you're not really ever going to find a true James Bond type villain unless they've got an English accent. Look, in the minute that you have left, Joe, what can consumers do, especially folk like me that have iPhones, supposedly the big smartphone provider, right? That genuinely, sincerely values the privacy of its customers. What could we push for on the market from smartphone manufacturers?
So that first gentleman was Mustafa Suleyman. He is an exec at Microsoft. And of course, the second is Sam Altman from OpenAI. Microsoft has now rolled out Recall, which takes screenshots of everything on your Windows platform and is intended to basically monitor everything that you do. You can turn it off, but it's always there, so on and so forth. What you can do is use other products. You can use Linux, for instance, for your operating system. You can use Brave browser for your browser. You can use Proton Mail for the end-to-end encrypted messaging. You can use Signal for end-to-end encrypted messaging. You can also, you've got Eric Prince's phone coming out. We'll see how that looks once it's here. And then, of course, you can use a VPN, a virtual private network. So you can use all of these methods, all the software in order to kind of conceal what you're doing, because as you know, in the UK and more, our own Justice Department are not simply looking at people's actions in order to identify potential dissent and criminalize people. They're looking at their speech. And so as we move into an era where surveillance is normalized, I think it's going to be for the best that people do everything possible to cloak themselves.
Joe, that's fantastic. Sadly, we don't have any time left, but come back on the show and give us an update on what the Lizard Boys are working on next. Well, in the meantime, where do people go to keep up with your splendid writing? I have one of your articles in front of me on my iPad right now. Where do they go?
Thank you very much, Ben. It's you go to joebot.xyz every Monday, an article up. Every Thursday, the Omega Point podcast just posted last night. You'll find a lot of in-depth information there. So joebot.xyz, joebot.xyz. Thank you very much, Ben.
Joe, thank you very much.
Free Steve Bannon.
Free Steve Bannon, indeed. So the final few moments of this show, final 5 minutes, Peter Mcilvenna. Good evening to you, as opposed to good afternoon,
Ben.
because we're on the same time zone here. The Lord Chancellor, UK Lord Chancellor Shabana Mahmood, announced that as part of this early release system, and this is from the ITV News website, by the way, it's one of national television stations in the UK, that police could even have to stop carrying out arrests in a worst case scenario, possibly leading to looting and the collapse of law and order. That's a direct quote here from ITV. What's going on in my beloved homeland, the Third World Banana Republic, formerly known as Great Britain?
Formerly known as Great Britain, Ben. You've hit it on the spot. This system is releasing, it's going to be Tuesday, this upcoming Tuesday, so only days away. Supposedly up to 5,000 prisoners are just going to be released after serving a proportion of their time away. We're told it will not be dangerous criminals, but actually whistleblowers have said actually there will be those who are serving time for sex crimes. Actually, they will also be eligible to release. And why is this happening? It's because 10 days ago, there were 100 places left in British prisons. 100 places. Now, we have 88,000 prisoners in the UK, much smaller than the US. I know you've got close to 1 million. So proportionally, you've got double the amount in the States that we have in the UK. But why has this happened? Because the government are intent on jailing those who participated or who tweeted or who were bystanders in the riots that happened in regards to mass immigration, in regard to the 3 girls that got stabbed to death, and an outpouring of anger. We have had today, there have been a number of court cases happening. We have had an 81-year-old man who has been charged with inciting some kind of violence. He was walking past. We've had another person jailed for 9 years. 9 years, he set fire to a bin outside a migration centre. He's been jailed for 9 years. Ben, we have those who engage in child rape being away and released after 4.5 years. So setting fire to a bin outside a migration centre is twice as bad as child rape. That's where we are in the UK, is frightening. And the same thing will come to the US. This is not just a UK problem. The same thing will come to the US, where these type of crimes, everything changes and people must be released to make room for all those on the right, all the common sense people, all the people concerned about immigration. They must be locked away from society.
Peter, in the recent general election in the UK, did Sir Keir Starmer stand on election, threatening to throw people in jail on the basis of their thought crimes? I didn't see that in the manifesto.
I missed it as well, Ben. It was not in there. Now, Keir Starmer obviously got elected on only a vote share. 20% of those who could vote voted for Keir Starmer. So we have got a far left government with a huge majority, the biggest majority since the Second World War and probably before that. We have got that far left government woke on steroids in the UK because of 20% of those who could vote went out to vote. That shows the bankruptcy of our electoral system. This was not on the ballot box, but when you have a government that have a majority of 200 odd, I mean, they've got 400 and something in Parliament, it becomes irrelevant because it's so big. There's no opposition. the so-called Conservative Party, they're in the middle of an election to try and pick a new leader to follow on from all the other failed leaders they've had. It's a dire situation with and actually Elon Musk is the opposition to the government in the UK.
Peter, 30 seconds. Tell me about Hot Saboku. Who have you got coming up next on your superb podcast?
We had Robert Malone last night. We've got on his book. We've got David Vance coming up on Saturday. Last week we had Sabine Howard looking at that memorial, which is coming up in DC, which is going to be unveiled on this coming next weekend.
Perfect.